there was no point in waiting for the traffic to clear, and that without the Jeep, driving off the road was just too dangerous. I headed back the way I came and turned off the highway at the first exit. I soon found a safer, albeit less direct route home.
It looks like I might have walked like that. I don't think what I just did.
As I sped down the disturbingly quiet back road, my mind began to wander. Without the distraction of imminent danger, I began to remember the horrific scenes I had witnessed just an hour ago. Images of mangled corpses flashed before my eyes, and my head began to spin. I swerved onto the wrong side of the road, just as another vehicle pulled out from a concealed entrance. I braked sharply, but it was too late to avoid a collision. Amazingly, I wasn't seriously injured, but my ride was badly damaged.
That's not fair.
Over to the car, I realized that the driver was either unconscious or dead. I didn't care which. I opened his door, removed his seatbelt, and dragged him out of the driver's seat, not noticing the deep bite marks on his arms and neck. Before I realized he was infected, he regained consciousness and sunk his teeth into my wrist.
Oh, come on.
I managed to escape and run off into the wood, but I succumbed to infection soon after.
That's stupid. Transport, I would have to walk the rest of the way home. Not wanting to waste any more precious time, I continued my journey on foot. After a half an hour of walking, I began to recognize my surroundings and knew that I would soon be home. There were several different routes I could take. Just away. Undoubtedly be dangerous in such a heavily populated area. I decided to follow the train line instead, since it ran not far from my house and would be totally deserted. Sure enough, I didn't see another soul. I finally arrived in my neighborhood, exhausted. I knew that my house was just a little further down the street, but the area was swarming with the infected. Most of them seemed distracted by what few survivors remained, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they noticed me. I remembered about a small alleyway nearby, one that would take me most of the way home in relative safety. I entered the alley, and as expected, it seemed totally devoid of life. However, as I walked past a large dumpster, an infected old man stepped out of the shadows and tried to grab me. Him as hard as I possibly could, but it didn't seem to have any effect. What?
Before I could swing again, he grabbed me and sunk his teeth deep into my neck.
You're a bitch.
I grabbed him by the neck, realizing that he'd be unable to bite me. I pushed him away as hard as I could, and he stumbled backward. I had bought myself valuable time, but it wouldn't take long for the creature to regain its balance and come at me again. I turned to run back the way I had came, only to see that another group of them had followed and were now blocking my retreat. My only hope was to try and get past the lone infected.
assailant as hard as I could. It hit him in the shoulder, which barely seemed to affect him at all. Before I could try anything else, he grabbed a hold of me and pulled me to the ground. I struggled to get free, but by then, the others had caught up, and I was overwhelmed. Grabbing a brick, I waited just long enough for the infected to get close before smashing it into his face. There was a sickening crack and his jawbone fractured and blood sprayed from his mouth. My former neighbor fell to the ground, and before he could get back up, I was able to run past. I sped down the alley and back onto the street. When I looked over my shoulder, there was no sign of my pursuers. I could see my house now, just 100 feet or so away. My heart sank when I saw yet another group of infected wandering aimlessly between me and my goal. I decided that it was too dangerous to carry on down the street. I went around the back of one of the neighbors' houses and climbed over the fence into their garden. It was tiring, but I carried on scrambling over the fences until I got to my own backyard. As I approached the house, I noticed the glass in the back door had been smashed and the door left slightly ajar. I was terrified for my wife's safety. I realized that whoever had broken into the house could still be in there, and without a weapon, I wouldn't be able to help my wife. I headed over to the shed and checked my pockets. Luckily, I still had my keys and was able to...
Chainsaw might run out with diesel or petrol or whatever. Sledgehammer looks good, was good, contacts is good. Sledgehammer!
I decided to take the sledgehammer. It was heavy and hard to use, but could easily smash a man's skull in a single blow.
Yeah, that's the thing about it. It's slow too.
With my weapon in hand, I left the shed and walked back to my house. Before I could enter, I discovered why the back door had been left ajar. A teenage looter emerged from the house carrying my television, obviously intent on profiting from the crisis. When he saw me, he dropped the TV and pulled out a large kitchen knife. At that moment, I couldn't tell which one of us was more afraid. I wasted no time in unleashing a brutal assault against the scumbag. He tried to defend himself, swiping at me with the knife, but only managed to scratch my arm. In return, I rained down blow after blow upon him, and within minutes he was dead. A pool of blood oozed from what was left of his skull, staining my lawn in a sickly shade of red.
Bitch!
Having dealt with the looter, I walked in through the back door. I was relieved to finally be safely indoors, but I couldn't rest yet. Not until I was certain my wife was okay. I quickly shut the back door and locked it, then looked around for some furniture to wedge in front of it. It took me a few minutes to properly secure the entrance, but at least I knew nobody would be able to force their way in.
I began searching the ground floor for my wife. As I came into the living room, I saw that John from next door sitting there. He had his back to me and was clearly oblivious to my presence. His shirt was covered in red stains. Let's see if he's okay. Be a nice guy.
I walked over to John.